The silence that fell over the grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council was absolute. 317 species, represented by their finest diplomats and leaders, sat frozen in their gravity-adjusted seats. Some had ceased to breathe entirely. Those who needed to breathe at all. The massive holographic display dominating the center of the chamber showed only a single vessel against the backdrop of stars. It was tiny compared to the Council's defense fleet positioned at the edge of the system, but not a single being present mistook its significance. Humans had arrived. High Counselor Vexella's 6 appendages trembled slightly as she rose from her ceremonial position. The Ixalan matriarch's translucent skin had dulled from its usual vibrant azure to a pale, sickly blue. "This session of the Galactic Council is temporarily suspended," she announced, her voice harmonics carefully controlled to hide the fear. "All representatives are advised to return to their embassy vessels until further notice." Nobody moved. Not immediately. Admiral Jensen watched the proceedings from the bridge of the ESS Prometheus with a grim satisfaction. The massive view screen before her showed the panicked diplomatic vessels, now scrambling to disconnect from the Council station. Behind her, the bridge crew maintained disciplined silence, though she could feel their tension. Humanity's first official contact with the Galactic Council wasn't supposed to happen like this, but after what they'd discovered, there had been no other choice. "Status report," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of 27 years in Earth's combined space forces. Lieutenant Commander Chen looked up from his console. "Their defense fleet is maintaining distance, Admiral. No weapons locked, no aggressive posturing. They're scared." "Good," Jensen replied, leaning forward slightly. "They should be." 3 months earlier, humanity had been blissfully unaware of the Galactic Council's existence. Earth had developed faster than light travel only 15 years prior, establishing colonies on 17 worlds across 22 star systems. They'd encountered simple life forms, studied the ruins of long-extinct civilizations, but found no evidence of contemporary intelligent alien species. Until the Artemis IV research vessel disappeared without a trace near the edges of known space, along with its crew of 37 scientists and explorers. The search mission found something unexpected: fragments of advanced technology unlike anything in human records, and a partial transmission log containing fleeting images of strange beings boarding the vessel. But most damning was a garbled communication fragment, untranslatable except for a single phrase in perfect English. "The humans must not join the Council." The ESS Prometheus was humanity's newest and most advanced warship, designed to protect the farthest colonies. Instead, it had been quietly repurposed for a single mission: find the truth, no matter where in the galaxy it led. In the Council chambers, Delegate Korin of the Viridian Collective hurried along a private corridor, their chitinous exoskeleton clicking against the polished floor. As the youngest species in the Council before humanity's appearance, they understood the precariousness of the situation better than most. The humans weren't supposed to develop FTL technology for another 2 centuries according to the predictive algorithms. Their sudden emergence had thrown centuries of careful planning into chaos. "Ambassador Tileri," Korin called out, catching sight of the willowy Ashtar representative gliding toward the private hangars. "You can't possibly leave now. We must convene an emergency session." The Ashtar turned, her luminescent features arranged in what passed for concern among her kind. "There is nothing to discuss, young one. The quarantine protocols failed. The humans have arrived with a warship, not the diplomatic vessel specified in first contact procedures." "But the Artemis was an unfortunate necessity," Tileri interrupted sharply. "The Council voted. The decision was made." Back on the Prometheus, Science Officer Dr. Eliza Rice studied the data streaming across her workstation. For weeks, she had worked to decode the alien communications intercepted during their covered approach to Council space. What she found had confirmed their worst fears. "Admiral," she called, not taking her eyes from the display, "I've decrypted more of their internal communications. The Artemis crew," her voice caught, "they're alive. Or they were 3 weeks ago. They're being held somewhere called the Preservation Enclave. Jensen's weathered face tightened. At 53, she had seen humanity stretch its reach to the stars, had witnessed the wonder and terror of that expansion. But nothing had prepared her for discovering that an advanced coalition of species had been monitoring Earth for centuries, deliberately avoiding contact, and apparently abducting humans who ventured too far. "Can you locate this enclave?" she asked. "Not yet," Rise admitted. "But I found something else. The Council has been manipulating the development of pre-FTL species throughout the galaxy. There's a protocol called guided evolution that's mentioned repeatedly in their secure communications. The implications settled heavily across the bridge. Humanity's rapid technological advancement had never been entirely their own. In the Council Station's private chambers, High Counselor Vexella faced the Oversight Committee, the true power behind the Galactic Council. "The containment failure is unacceptable," stated Elder Zhogsan, the ancient Meridian whose species had helped found the Council 50,000 years earlier. Humanity was explicitly designated as high intervention priority after they split the atom. Their evolutionary path was precisely calibrated. The models failed to account for their adaptability. Vexilla responded defensively. "They achieved in 15 years what should have taken centuries. And now they've traced the Artemis incident back to us," rasped Representative Euclath of the Dorjan Mandate. "The humans were never supposed to discover us like this. The psychological profile indicates they will react with extreme prejudice to the preservation program." The ESF Prometheus maintained its position, a silent threat that had thrown the galaxy's oldest political body into disarray. Inside the ship's secure conference room, Admiral Jensen addressed her command staff. "We've confirmed the Council has been abducting humans from deep space missions for at least 30 years, she stated flatly. "We've also confirmed they've been influencing Earth's development, possibly for millennia. Their technology is centuries beyond ours, but they're clearly terrified of direct confrontation." "Why?" asked Security Chief Rivera, the question on everyone's mind. Dr. Rice pulled up a holographic comparison between human DNA and samples collected covertly from Council representatives. "Because we're unique among spacefaring species, our genetic structure shows no signs of the engineering markers present in every Council species we've analyzed. Whatever they've been doing to guide our development, they haven't altered our fundamental nature, and that scares them," Jensen concluded. "We're the wild card they can't fully predict." As the Galactic Council representatives scrambled in disarray, as the Prometheus maintained its unwavering vigil, and as the truth of humanity's place in the cosmos hung in the balance, one thing became increasingly clear: the old order of the galaxy was about to change forever. On the far side of the Council Station, a small diplomatic vessel detached silently from its moorings. Unlike the panicked exodus of official representatives, this ship moved with deliberate purpose. Inside, a lone figure studied a secure transmission. Images of the Artemis crew, alive but detained, unaware they had become the catalyst for first contact gone horribly wrong. The figure made a decision and entered new coordinates into the navigation system. The ESS Prometheus would soon receive an unexpected visitor, someone with the truth about why the Galactic Council had fled at humanity's arrival, and why the galaxy's most powerful alliance feared the potential of an unshackled human race. The diplomatic vessel cut silently through space, its stealth systems engaged to avoid detection by both Council security and the human warship. Inside, Liaison Officer Talmy checked the encrypted communication channel one final time before wiping all traces from the ship's systems. As a member of the Arconian species, known for their neutrality in Council politics, she had spent decades documenting the ethical violations of the preservation protocols. Now, everything had changed. She gazed at the distant silhouette of the ESS Prometheus. Human design was unmistakable, practical, almost brutalist compared to the flowing organic aesthetics preferred by most Council species. Yet there was something beautiful in its straightforward purpose. The humans built things to last, to endure the harshness of space rather than to deny it. just like their species, she murmured. The communication console chimed softly. Unidentified vessel, came a stern human voice. You have entered proximity space of the ESS Prometheus. Identify yourself immediately, or we will take defensive measures. Talmay took a deep breath. This is Liaison Officer Talmay of the... She paused, then continued, formerly of the Galactic Council Diplomatic Corps. I come alone, unarmed, with information about your missing researchers. I request asylum. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Lieutenant Commander Chen looked up from his console. Admiral, the vessel is registering as Council Diplomatic Class, but it's running with minimal power signatures. Single life form aboard. Admiral Jensen's eyes narrowed. After 30 years in space, she had developed instincts that had saved her crew more times than she cared to remember. It could be a trap. The asylum request suggests otherwise, said Dr. Rice, who had joined them on the bridge. This could be our chance to get answers. Jensen nodded slowly. Security team to Hangar Bay 3. Full containment protocols. She turned to her executive officer. Commander Williams, you have the bridge. I'm going to greet our guest personally. Inside the council station, the emergency session had devolved into chaos. Representatives from traditionally rival species now found themselves unified by a common fear. Humanity had arrived centuries ahead of schedule, armed, and apparently aware of the Council's interference. High Counselor Vexela struggled to maintain order. The Containment Committee assures me the humans have no proof of our involvement in their development. They are merely investigating the loss of their research vessel. Then why did they arrive in a warship? Demanded the Krell ambassador, his scaled skin flushing with stress hormones. The predictive models gave us 8.7 decades before they would even develop reliable interstellar communication. From the back of the chamber, Elder Zhou-Xan observed with ancient eyes. The Meridian had lived through 3 other species reaching unexpected technological thresholds. None had posed the unique challenge that humans did. The question, he said, his soft voice somehow cutting through the din, is not why they are here, but who guided them here. The chamber fell silent. The humans could not have found us without help. In that moment of quiet, warning klaxons began to sound throughout the station. Aboard the Prometheus, Talmay sat in the ship's secure conference room, her slender fingers wrapped around a cup of what the humans called coffee. The bitter stimulant was unnecessary for her biology, but the ritual of sharing a drink seemed important to these people. Across the table, Admiral Jensen studied their visitor carefully. The Arconian appeared humanoid, with pale lavender skin and large, multifaceted eyes that reflected light in prismatic patterns. Unlike many council species, she required no environmental adjustments to survive in Earth-standard conditions. Let's be direct, Jensen said. You claim to have information about the Artemis crew. Prove it. Talmay placed a small data crystal on the table. Captain Sarah Rodriguez, Chief Science Officer David Corey, Xenobiologist Teresa Wong, 34 other crew members, all alive, all in stasis at the Preservation Enclave on Epsilon Station. Dr. Rice activated a secure tablet, and the crystal projected holographic images. The missing Artemis crew, suspended in translucent chambers, monitoring equipment surrounding them. Why? Demanded Jensen, her voice tight with controlled anger. Why take them? Why monitor Earth? Because humanity terrifies the Council, Talmay replied simply. You evolved naturally. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. What do you mean, naturally? Asked Dr. Rice, leaning forward. Talmay's prismatic eyes shifted, catching the light in new patterns. Every spacefaring species in the Council was guided, genetically modified by the founders to ensure certain traits were emphasized and others suppressed. Aggression, territoriality, resource competition, all carefully balanced to prevent interstellar conflict. She gestured to the humans present. Except yours. Humanity developed without intervention at the genetic level. The Council has only manipulated your technological progress, slightly accelerating certain discoveries while delaying others. They've been steering Earth toward a predetermined evolutionary path, one that would make you compatible with Council membership in another few centuries. But we developed faster than light travel ahead of schedule, Jensen concluded. Precisely. When your Artemis vessel approached the outer marker of Council space, the Containment Committee enacted emergency protocols. They intended to study your crew, wipe their memories, then return them with subtle neural blocks that would inhibit further deep space exploration. Security Chief Rivera, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. So why are you telling us this? Why betray your people? Talmay's expression hardened. Because they're not my people. Not anymore. She touched the data crystal again, and new images appeared. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of species, all carefully cataloged. This is the Preservation Archive. The Council doesn't just guide technological development. They routinely suppress civilizations they deem unprepared or unsuitable for space travel. The images shifted to show planetary populations living in carefully maintained environments, apparently unaware of their captivity. Some species have been preserved for thousands of years, trapped at pre-industrial technology levels, because the Council decided they were too aggressive, too individualistic, or simply too unpredictable to join galactic society. Admiral Jensen stood abruptly, pacing the length of the conference room. You're saying they're playing God with entire civilizations. The Council calls it guided evolution. A small faction of us call it what it is, genocide of potential. Talmay's voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed too much. I've spent decades documenting these abuses, but the Oversight Committee is too powerful to challenge from within. Until now, said Dr. Reyes, understanding dawning on her face, until humanity showed up unannounced with a warship. Talmay nodded. The Council fears you not because of your technology, but because of what you represent. A species that developed spacefaring capability while maintaining your natural evolutionary path, competitive, adaptable, and unpredictable. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Chen monitored the long-range sensors with growing concern. Commander Williams, Council vessels are changing formation. They're establishing a blockade around the station. Williams frowned. Are they targeting us? No, sir. They appear to be. Containing the station itself. Back in the conference room, Admiral Jensen faced a decision that would shape the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Where is this Epsilon station? How do we rescue our people? Before Talmay could answer, the ship's emergency alert system activated. Admiral, to the bridge, came Williams' urgent voice. The Council station is going into lockdown, and we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the defense fleet. Talmay's prismatic eyes widened in alarm. No, they wouldn't. She stood suddenly. Admiral, we need to move your ship immediately. The Oversight Committee has enacted Containment Protocol Omega. What does that mean? Demanded Jensen. It means, said Talmay gravely, that they would rather destroy the entire station, and themselves with it, than allow humans to discover the full truth of what they've been doing across the galaxy for the past 50,000 years. All hands, battle stations. Admiral Jensen's voice carried through the ship's communication system as she strode onto the bridge. The crew moved with practiced precision, systems powering up as defensive protocols engage. On the main view screen, the Council's defense fleet had formed a tight perimeter around the station, their weapons systems glowing with building energy. What exactly is Containment Protocol Omega? Jensen demanded as Talmay followed her onto the bridge. The Arconian's face had lost its lavender hue, fading to an ashen gray. It's their final solution for evolutionary anomalies. They've only used it twice in recorded history. She pointed to the station. Those energy signatures indicate they're preparing to collapse the artificial quantum singularity that powers the station. The resulting explosion would eliminate everything within this star system, including themselves. Dr. Rice asked incredulously. The Oversight Committee has escape vessels with experimental jump drives. They've planned for this contingency. Talmay moved to a console, her slender fingers flying across the unfamiliar human interface. May I? Jensen nodded tersely, and Security Chief Rivera positioned himself directly behind their guest, hand resting on his sidearm. There, Talmay said, highlighting a section of the station. The primary control hub for the containment field. If we can disrupt it, even temporarily, I can transmit an emergency signal to activate the Preservation Alliance network. The what? Jensen asked, eyes narrowed. We aren't the only ones who believe the Council has gone too far. There are sympathizers throughout Council space, scientists, diplomats, military officers who've witnessed the ethical violations and want change. Talmay's prismatic eyes reflected the tactical display. But we need a distraction. Commander Williams stepped forward. Admiral, if I may, the Prometheus was designed with a modified EM pulse capability for disabling pirate vessels. If recalibrated, it could temporarily disable the Council ship's targeting systems without causing permanent damage. Jensen considered for only a moment. Do it. Lieutenant Commander Chen, plot an escape vector that keeps us between the station and their fleet. We'll need to move fast once we've disrupted their defenses. Aboard the Council station, High Counselor Vexala faced the grim faces of the Oversight Committee. The containment protocols are ready, but the human vessel remains in range. We cannot guarantee their destruction. Elder Zhogsan's ancient face showed no emotion. The humans must not leave with knowledge of the preservation program. Our entire galactic order depends on careful balance. But destroying an entire star system, Vexala began, is preferable to the alternative, finished Representative Ukalath. If humanity learns the truth and shares it with other developing worlds, 50,000 years of guided evolution will collapse into chaos. The chamber trembled slightly as the station's power core began channeling energy toward the quantum collapse sequence. Emergency evacuation alerts sounded throughout the diplomatic quarters, though only the committee knew the true purpose. On the Prometheus, Dr. Rice worked furiously alongside Talmay, their disparate technologies meshing in unexpected ways. The quantum disruption is building faster than anticipated, Rice reported. 10 minutes until critical mass. The Council ships are changing formation, reported Chen. They're creating a barrier directly in our projected path. Jensen made a decision. Commander Williams, ready the EM pulse. Tactical, prepare to deploy countermeasures. Navigation, set course directly for their weakest point. She turned to Rivera. And get our guest to the communications array. She has a message to send. As Rivera escorted Talmay from the bridge, the security chief couldn't help asking, how do you know this Preservation Alliance will respond in time? Talmay's expression was grim but determined, because they've been waiting for this moment for centuries. The Council believes they control the narrative of galactic history, but they've created too many victims. All those victims needed was a catalyst. She glanced back toward the bridge. Humanity just provided it. The Prometheus surged forward, its powerful engines pushing it toward the blockade of Council vessels. Inside the Council station, panicked diplomats scrambled toward their ships, unaware that their leaders had initiated a protocol designed to destroy not just the human vessel, but everything in the vicinity. Quantum collapse approaching critical threshold, reported a technician to the Oversight Committee. Estimated time to irreversibility, 3 minutes. Elder Zhogsan and the other committee members moved toward their private escape vessel. Begin the sequence, he ordered. We will observe the aftermath from safe distance. Back on the Prometheus, Admiral Jensen stood resolute as her ship accelerated toward the Council blockade. Impulse charged and ready. Williams confirmed. Hold for my mark, Jensen ordered, watching as the distance closed. We'll only get one shot at this. The Council vessels began firing warning shots, energy weapons illuminating the void ahead of the human warship. The Prometheus held its course, its point defense systems intercepting the increasingly aggressive barrage. Talmay's fingers moved across the communication system with desperate speed. The signal is ready, she told Rivera. But we need to be closer, much closer to the station for it to penetrate their jamming field. Through the viewport, they could see the Council station beginning to shimmer with an unnatural light as the quantum collapse gathered momentum. The blockade tightened, weapons fully charged and tracking the approaching human vessel. "We're out of time," Rivera reported to the bridge. "The signal needs to go now, or not at all." Jensen watched the tactical display as the distances narrowed, between her ship and the blockade, between the station and complete destruction, between humanity and a truth that could change everything. "All hands," she commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Brace for impact." The Prometheus shuddered as it absorbed the first direct hit from the Council blockade. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as damage control teams raced to contain a breach on the lower decks. "Impulse ready," Commander Williams announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Fire," Jensen ordered. The Prometheus released a wave of concentrated electromagnetic energy that rippled outward, washing over the Council vessels. Their weapon systems flickered and died, navigation controls temporarily disabled. The path was clear, but only for moments. "Full thrust. Get us to that station," Jensen commanded. The human warship shot forward through the gap in the blockade, accelerating toward the Council station. But as they approached, the station's exterior began to change. Massive sections of the outer hull peeled away, revealing something underneath that had been hidden for millennia. "What the hell is that?" Chen whispered, staring at the sensor readings. Beneath the ornate diplomatic facade of the Council station lay an ancient vessel of staggering proportions. As the decorative exterior fell away, a dark, almost organic-looking ship emerged, sharp angles and impossible geometries that hurt the eyes to look upon directly. "That's not possible," Talmy gasped, her voice coming through the bridge communications. That's a founder vessel." In the station's core, Elder Zhogsan stood before an ancient control interface that had never been meant for his species to operate. The other committee members had already fled, believing they were enacting the quantum collapse protocol. Only Zhogsan knew the truth. What appeared to be a self-destruct sequence was actually an awakening. 50,000 years, he whispered to himself. 50,000 years of preparation, and the humans force our hand prematurely. His withered hands moved across the living metal of the interface, symbols lighting beneath his touch. The structure around him pulsed with growing energy that had nothing to do with quantum physics. Back on the Prometheus, Talmay's composure had completely shattered. "Admiral, we need to retreat immediately. That's not a station. It's a harvester." "A what?" Jensen demanded. Dr. Reyes, monitoring the communication, went pale. "The signal. Talmay, your transmission to the Preservation Alliance. Won't matter if that thing fully activates." Talmy cut in. The founders weren't benevolent creators guiding evolution. They were farmers, Admiral. They seed worlds, guide species to specific technological thresholds, then harvest them when they reach peak development. The revelation hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The Council wasn't preserving species. They were livestock managers, maintaining the herd for slaughter. "The Council itself doesn't know," Talmy continued frantically. "Only the Oversight Committee understands the truth. They believe they're exempt. Special collaborators who will be spared when the harvest begins." As if responding to her words, the ancient vessel continued its emergence, shedding the last of its disguise. The Council ships that had formed the blockade were now in disarray, some fleeing, others moving to defensive positions, clearly as surprised as the humans. "If that's true," Jensen said slowly, "then why is it awakening now?" A new voice cut across the communication system. Elder Zhogsan himself, broadcasting on all frequencies. "We have protected this galaxy for 50 millennia, guiding evolution along safe paths. But humanity," his voice twisted with disgust, "humanity represents contamination, unpredictable, unguided. You forced us to accelerate the timeline." The massive founder vessel, now fully revealed, began to pulse with energy that defied the ship's sensors. Arcs of impossible light connected it to nearby council vessels, which shuddered and went dark, their crews silenced instantly. "It's feeding," Ptolemy whispered in horror. In the chaos, Commander Williams noticed something on the tactical display. "Admiral, the Artemis crew. According to these readings, they're being moved. There's a transport vessel leaving from the far side of the station." Jensen made an instant decision. "Williams, prepare a boarding team. We're getting our people back." She turned to Chen. "Can we target whatever's generating those energy arcs?" "Negative, Admiral. Our weapons would be ineffective against that kind of technology." The ship rocked again as a nearby council vessel exploded, caught in the harvester's feeding beam. The situation was deteriorating by the second. "Ptolemy," Jensen called through the communication system. "You said the Preservation Alliance has been waiting for this moment. What exactly were they planning to do against something like this?" There was a moment of silence before Ptolemy responded, her voice suddenly calm with the clarity of terrible purpose. "They've been preparing a weapon, Admiral. A virus designed to turn the Founders' own technology against them." "A computer virus?" Rise asked. "No," Ptolemy replied. "A biological one. The Founders and their technology are partly organic. The Alliance has developed a retrovirus that can rewrite their base code, but it requires direct access to the core systems." Jensen looked at the ancient horror that continued to feed on the council ships, growing stronger with each absorption. The Prometheus was powerful, but nothing in humanity's arsenal could hope to stand against the technological might of a species 50,000 years their senior. "So someone needs to deliver it manually," Jensen concluded, the weight of what that meant settling heavily on her shoulders. "I'll go," Security Chief Rivera said, stepping forward. "I have the most combat experience for a solo mission." Admiral Jensen shook her head. "Not alone. We need a team." She turned to Dr. Reyes. "How quickly can you prepare this retrovirus?" "Ptolemy has the base template in her data crystal," Reyes answered. "I'll need 20 minutes to synthesize it in the medical lab." "You have 10, Jensen replied. "Williams, continue preparations for the Artemis rescue. Chen, keep us positioned to avoid those energy beams while maintaining maximum shield coverage." As the crew rushed to execute her orders, Jensen turned to Ptolemy. "You know the internal layout of that thing. You're with me." The Arconian's prismatic eyes widened. "You're leading the mission yourself." "Damn right I am," Jensen said, checking her sidearm. "I didn't come all this way to send someone else to finish the job." In the heart of the awakening harvester, Elder Zhou watched with reverence as ancient systems activated around him. The living metal of the walls pulsed with increasing frequency, organic technology merging with his consciousness. For thousands of years, the Oversight Committee had served as caretakers, believing they were special, chosen ones who would be elevated when the Founders returned. "The contamination spreads," he whispered to the ship. "The humans have infected others with their independence. The harvest must begin now." The ship responded not with words but with sensation. Hunger, anticipation, purpose. More council vessels were being absorbed, their energy and biomass feeding the ancient vessel's awakening. Soon it would reach critical mass. 20 minutes later, 10 more than Reyes had been allocated. A small team assembled in the Prometheus launch bay. Admiral Jensen, Security Chief Rivera, Ptolemy, and 2 combat specialists prepared to board a modified shuttle. "The retrovirus is unstable," Reyes explained, handing Jensen a sealed container. "It needs to be injected directly into the primary neural node, what they would consider the brain of the vessel." "And where is that?" Jensen asked Ptolemy. "Where Elder Zhou will be," she replied grimly. At the control interface, Commander Williams approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we've located the Artemis crew. They're being transferred to a vessel on the far side of the harvester. We can intercept in approximately 12 minutes. "Make it happen," Jensen ordered. "Rescue our people and get them back to Earth. If we don't return in 30 minutes, she didn't need to finish the sentence. The shuttle launched, accelerating toward the massive harvester. As they approached, a strange opening appeared in its hull. Not a docking bay, but something more organic, like a mouth opening to consume them. "It's inviting us in," Talmay explained, her voice tight with tension. It perceives small vessels as symbiotic entities, not threats. Once inside, they moved through corridors that shifted and reformed around them, the living architecture responding to their presence. Rivera led the way, weapon ready, as Talmay guided them toward the control center. "Something's wrong," she whispered suddenly, stopping. "It's too quiet, too easy." As if triggered by her words, the corridor behind them sealed shut, the organic material flowing like liquid metal. Ahead, the passage opened into a vast chamber where Elder Zhou waited, his form now partially merged with the ship itself. "Humans," he said, his voice resonating unnaturally. "You are indeed as adaptable as the models predicted. The founders will be most interested in studying your species before consumption." Jensen stepped forward. "What exactly are these founders?" "Another advanced alien race." Zhou laugh was hollow. "They are not alien, Admiral Jensen. They created all of us, including humanity. You were simply an experiment that went unmonitored for too long." Rivera positioned himself for a clear shot, but Jensen motioned him to wait. "If they created us," she continued, "why harvest us?" "Creation implies ownership," Zhou replied. "The founders seed worlds across galaxies, returning periodically to collect the evolutionary fruits of their labor. Some species are preserved for further development, others are consumed. The cycle has continued for millions of years." Talmay stepped forward, but something changed. "The founders haven't returned as scheduled." "A temporary delay," Zhou dismissed. "The awakening of this vessel will signal them. Then the true harvest begins." Jensen nodded almost imperceptibly to Rivera. In one fluid motion, he fired at the organic conduits connecting Zhou to the ship. The Elder screamed, a sound both organic and mechanical as the connection was temporarily severed. Jensen rushed forward with the retrovirus container, but the floor beneath her feet suddenly liquefied, threatening to absorb her. The combat specialists fired at the surrounding structure as Talmay pulled Jensen free. "The neural node," Talmay shouted, pointing to a pulsing mass behind where Zhou had stood. Jensen threw the container with all her strength. It shattered against the neural node, the retrovirus spreading across its surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire chamber began to convulse. The walls rippled, the floor buckled. Zhou screamed again, reaching for the neural node. "Too late," he gasped, his ancient eyes fixed on Jensen. "You think you've won, but you've only ensured your own extinction. Without the Founders' protection, without guided evolution, the galaxy will descend into chaos." "We'll take our chances," Jensen replied as the structure around them began to disintegrate. "Get to the shuttle," Rivera shouted as sections of the ceiling collapsed. They ran through shifting corridors as the massive harvester began to tear itself apart from within, the retrovirus rewriting its organic programming. Emergency lighting flashed as they finally reached their shuttle and launched away from the dying vessel. "Commander Williams," Jensen called through the communication system. "Status on the Artemis crew." "Secure, Admiral," came the welcome reply. All 37 accounted for and en route to the Prometheus. As they pulled away, the harvester began to collapse in on itself, energy discharges rippling across its surface. The remaining council ships were scattering in all directions, their carefully ordered society shattered in the space of an hour. "It's over," Talmay said softly, watching the destruction. "No," Jensen corrected, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond. "It's just beginning." The shuttle docked with the Prometheus, and Jensen was the first to step through the airlock. Commander Williams waited with relief clear on his face. "Admiral, we've received thousands of transmissions from across Council space. The Preservation Alliance is moving openly now, freeing suppressed worlds and..." His report was cut short by the arrival of the Artemis survivors. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stepped forward, pale but steady. "Admiral Jensen," she said, saluting. "Thank you for the rescue. But there's something you need to know." She glanced at the other rescued scientists, who nodded gravely. "What is it, Captain?" Jensen asked. "The Founders," Rodriguez replied. "They're already here, and they're not what anyone thinks they are." Jensen's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "They're already here." Captain Rodriguez gestured to the viewing port where the remnants of the harvester continued to break apart, scattered energy discharges illuminating the darkness. "During our captivity, we were studied extensively. They thought our minds were wiped during each session, but Dr. Corey developed a method to retain fragments of memory." She led Jensen and the others to the briefing room, where the rest of the Artemis crew waited. Dr. David Corey, still pale from his ordeal, activated a holographic display showing strange symbols they'd recovered. "The beings we call Founders aren't returning," he explained. "They never left. They've been dormant, watching through the eyes of every species they created." Talmay looked confused. "What are you saying?" Dr. Teresa Wong stepped forward. "We all carry their genetic markers. What the Council thought was their control mechanism for guided evolution. But it's actually a dormant consciousness, fragments of the Founders themselves embedded within every sentient species they engineered. Except humans," Jensen realized. "That's why we terrify the Council. We evolved without their influence." "Not exactly," Rodriguez corrected. "We examined our own genetic samples during captivity. Humans have the markers too, but they're different, corrupted or altered somehow. We evolved naturally for thousands of years before something changed our trajectory." The implications stunned everyone into silence. Humanity wasn't free from the Founders' influence. They were the result of a failed experiment, an evolutionary path that diverged from its programming. "The Harvester wasn't going to signal the Founders to return," Corey continued. "It was going to trigger the dormant genetic markers, awakening the Founder consciousness within all Council species simultaneously. A complete takeover from within." "And the retrovirus," asked Rivera. "Should disrupt that process," Talmay said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Alliance designed it specifically to attack the Founder genetic markers. That's why it worked on the Harvester, the same biological blueprint." Commander Williams entered the briefing room, his expression grim. "Admiral, long-range communications are being flooded with reports from across Council space. Entire populations are experiencing massive neurological events. The dormant markers must be failing, breaking down. The Founders are dying," Talmay realized. "Not just in the Harvester, but in every being carrying their genetic signature." "Will it affect humans?" Jensen asked sharply. Dr. Huang shook her head. "Our markers are already altered. Whatever changed us long ago may have inadvertently protected us from this." Over the next several hours, the full scope of the transformation became clear. Throughout Council space, the rigid hierarchies that had maintained 50,000 years of guided evolution were collapsing. Species long suppressed were emerging from their enforced stasis. The Preservation Alliance, once a small resistance movement, was coordinating relief efforts and establishing communication with newly liberated worlds. 1 week later, the Prometheus prepared to return to Earth, its mission radically transformed. In the observation lounge, Admiral Jensen stood with Talmay, watching as representatives from 30 former Council species gathered on a neutral vessel nearby, the first meeting of what was being called the Galactic Concord. "What will you tell your people?" Talmay asked. "The truth," Jensen replied simply. "That we're not alone, that the galaxy is in upheaval, and that humanity has an opportunity to help shape what comes next." "And the Founders?" Jensen gazed out at the stars. "If they embedded themselves in all of us, maybe they never intended to harvest us at all. Maybe this was their true purpose, creating life that would eventually break free from their control, continue evolving on its own terms. A legacy rather than a farm," Talmay mused. Captain Rodriguez joined them, carrying a data pad with preliminary findings from continued research. Whatever the case, we have work to do. 17 previously unknown civilizations have made contact in the past 3 days alone. They'd been in hiding, developing independently, just like Earth. Not completely like Earth, Ptolemy corrected. Your world is unique, not because you evolved without influence, but because something or someone deliberately altered your path. She smiled, her prismatic eyes reflecting the distant stars. The question isn't who created humanity, Admiral. It's who set you free. As the Prometheus prepared to jump to Earth, carrying news that would forever change humanity's understanding of their place in the cosmos, Admiral Jensen couldn't help but feel that this wasn't an ending at all. The galaxy had lived under the shadow of the Founders for millennia, species cultivated and controlled for purposes not their own. Now, for the first time, they would all write their own story, together. The ship's engines hummed as it oriented toward Earth. Home. But now, just one world among many in a galaxy suddenly, gloriously, dangerously free.